Is the media industry going through secular or permanent changes? Will I ever see the good old days come back?
Well, I think the current period is really unprecedented that is happening in the media industry. I think that you have the combination of some very challenging sectoral trends occurring in different businesses. At the same time, you have a major crisis in the business cycle. The confluence of both happening at the same time is obviously causing enormous consternation across the industry. I think if you just take the cyclical challenges perhaps first, the businesses that are most dependent upon advertising are obviously the ones hardest hit there. But in some ways, the trends that have been happening really over the last decade are just exacerbated by the fact that the economy is in a significant downturn. So if you look at advertising businesses, whether they be at a national or local level, a lot of them benefited from advantages that Bill mentioned in his opening. In many cases, they were the only ways to connect with audiences either at national scale or in a specific locality or a specific region. They often had an advantaged position from a market structure standpoint. In most cases, that is not what the landscape looks like today. There is a massive amount of audience fragmentation that's occurred really across all media. There's an expansion of advertising opportunities and marketing alternatives that are available to advertisers that really gives the market an oversupply of available inventory, which pushes prices down, which makes it more difficult to maintain the margins that a lot of media businesses have enjoyed. And then there are also big challenges associated on the consumption front that even go beyond fragmentation, that go to the core as to whether businesses like newspapers, local stations, radio, and the like actually can enjoy anything like the audience consumption and economic returns like they had in the past. The whole topic of technology, I think, is core to kind of understanding whether or not businesses can actually return to something that looks to be attractive. And technology has basically opened up the media business to a whole new set of challenges and a whole new set of players that have caused tremendous disruption. They've changed the way people discover media. They've changed the way advertisers can connect to audiences. And they've changed the way each of us actually participate and consume media every day. I think another thing that makes it challenging and which points to the fact that you really don't have an either-or situation, cyclical or structural. You actually have both happening, is even if you look at the production side of things, whether it's video games or feature films or even television production, the opportunity is really on a global basis to have production in places that in many cases are much lower cost than was traditionally available. Enters in a whole different dynamic too, to where companies are going to source their employees, where they're going to invest in new facilities, and where they're going to seek to grow their businesses over time. I think on the plus side, there are some developments, some trends that give some optimism for the business. I mean, I think first of all, business cycles return, advertisers will spend again, but they'll perhaps spend differently than they had in the past. I think what we've seen, what I've seen in the market is that it's undeniable that advertisers are going to be focused more and more on relevance, accountability, and to a certain degree interactivity in what they're looking for. And in mediums, whether they be video-based, print-based, or otherwise, that can adapt to that are actually going to be positioned coming out of the downturn to do better. Companies that are not saddled by a lot of debt, with good cash flows, and can actually be in a position to be consolidators or additive in terms of the capabilities and the things they can do, are actually going to be the ones that in a really Darwinist period like what we're in now are actually going to be rather advantaged coming out of the downturn. And I think you'll see those companies that are well capitalized, that have good balance sheets, that have cash, and they are out there, they'll be the ones that will be actively reshaping the business in their favor.
Thanks, Chris. You said two things that I'd like to just briefly react to. Well, one was the advertising downturn. That's almost unheard of in a lot of ways. I never forgot doing a strategic plan when I was president of Westinghouse broadcasting business many years ago. And one of the things in our strategic plan said, we don't worry about a bad economy. People advertise more in bad economies, that we're recession-proof. Well, that's certainly not the case anymore. Something else that Chris mentioned was media reaction. And one of the media reactions is cutting back. I'm on the board of a number of media companies, and every one of them, even if they didn't have to, are cutting back 15, 20, one of them 40% in staff. Scott, is the media business overreacting to what's going on?
I think in some areas they might be. In the area of content, if you look at the way they manage content or develop content, there's been a lot of cutbacks there. People are repurposing things. They're actually doing things much more efficiently. Is it too much? Maybe in some cases. For the most part, I think people are actually doing a pretty good job in reacting on the content management side. Where I say the bigger challenge is reaction in terms of ad sales. If you think about it, so taking they're reacting on the sort of the core business side of producing the content in an appropriate manner, but I don't see enough things happening in a transformational way on the business side of things in terms of ad sales, if I take ad sales as an example. If you think about it, I think actually the industry may be underreacting there. In the days of having a targeted salesperson that sells one specific product, I sell ads for a car magazine, I sell ads for a news magazine, are relatively numbered. And if you think about the ad sales environment and how advertisements are generally sold today, it is one of the last sort of old school, more off-the-cuff, less technically managed or sales channels and sales organizations that you see typically. So take an example in the local market, and I think then you can apply it to the macro market. In my hometown, in Omaha, Nebraska, right, you have a newspaper that's got a predominant local market share. You've got 4 to 5 local TV stations. You've got 4 to 5 radio stations. You've got an outdoor company, out-of-home company selling billboards. You've got the local cable affiliate selling advertisements. So you've got anywhere from 12 to 15 people all calling on the same car dealership. And what's happened is the technology is giving us the ability to target ads more effectively, even in the local markets. So you're able to get a higher CPM, absolutely true. And I'm sure Roger would agree with this. You can get a higher CPM when you're selling more targeted ads, but the reality is the size of that transaction is going down. So even though the CPM costs are going up, the actual dollar amount is going down. So in order to actually maintain your revenues at the same level, your salespeople have to make a lot more calls unless you fundamentally change the way you're doing business. At a certain point, get out there, try harder, make more calls isn't going to work anymore. So in terms of rethinking fundamentally the way we distribute our product and how we sell our product is a way I think the industry has actually been slow to react and in some cases underreacting. As a result, I think some companies are not going to survive, and those that are left are going to react more efficiently. You see changes happening more dramatically in the newspaper world first because they've been hurt first, but I think they're going to see it in other places as well. I think local it's going to start with, and it will work its way up to the national magazines, the national networks, and you'll see more changes there going forward.
Scott, I just have to ask you, what are the new models then of selling? You say, I mean, if the selling models are broken, who's trying something new and what's new?
Well, a couple of things. I hate to use the example because it's so overused. Is the Google model where you're actually sort of trying to auction things off, so you have the buyer sort of assign the value, but again, they still have a sales force out generating value or generating interest. But one of the things that I think people need to start to think about is how can we pool those sellers. So you have people in local markets, and I think only a couple of places that people have announced they're going to try it, and it'll be interesting to see how it actually plays out. Selling multiple products. So the local newspaper could actually sell ads for the local radio station as well. Or you could have, even within a company, many of the media conglomerates, interestingly enough, I think the walls are harder to break down within the organization. I'll sell for 2 magazines, I'll sell for 3. You see that starting to happen more and more. And I think that will, again, as the sellers start to expand their footprint.
Okay. One of the things that I worry about is the mass part of mass media. especially from the world that I came from, where we used to burp and half of the country would see that reaction the next day. I'm interested in the reaction of this panel, particularly Michael. Do you think there's going to be a mass media in the future, or is it all going to be these little teeny niches where we all are reinforcing our prejudices? I watch one website or TV channel, and my wife watches another, and my kids watch others.
Well, the first thing I would say, Bill, is that it's clearly not the same common campfire you're talking about.
That's for sure.
There's no question there. The disruptions to the business model, particularly on distribution, have been shocking. And I think it's worth noting in the cyclical downturn and the pressures there, those do hit the mass media in a way more sharply than some of these niche media. If you think of the NBCs of the world, CBS in particular, subsisting without the subscription fees that buoy the economics of, say, an MTV and then the other cable channels, they really are fully exposed to the advertising downturn, and therefore the pressure there is real. But what I would say is I think you actually need look no further than the success of Hulu and actually take some heart there for mass media. What that does for me is verify, from a consumer perspective, the demand for professionally created, highly polished, buzzed about media in preference in terms of time spent, in terms of advertising dollars, in terms of growth, to some of the nichier content, the user-generated content, which for a moment looked like it was going to take over the world. What's clear there is that consumers still want the kind of high-quality product that the mass media industry knows how to produce. The other thing that's worth noting is that just as consumers still want it, marketers still crave this. And for all that we are entering a new world, and Chris can be very eloquent on, the next wave of marketing tools that marketers are availing themselves to, there still is no substitute to a Super Bowl audience for someone who's launching a product or trying to build a brand. And I think the success they had selling that inventory, even in this environment, such as it was, validates that. So the mass media, it may not look like we are used to it looking, right? It may not be 20 ratings when you run a test pattern. People are changing channels. People are consuming it when they want it, the way they want it. But the underlying content creation and the value that those folks will be able to generate, I'm quite confident that after this wave of disruption, there will be a very large core value remaining there.
That pleases me to hear that.